Hello all, welcome you to the course on corporate laws and governance. In this video, we are going to learn about the unfair and the restrictive trade practices under the Consumer Protection Act. Before we get into the Unfair and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, let us understand what are all the rights that the consumers have under the Consumers Protection Act. Section 6 deals with the rights of the consumer. The first right that the consumer has is the right to be protected from the hazardous goods which will be harming them physically as well as their environment. If we look at the case between Achla Dhalvi versus Lipton India, when the complainant got the Lipton tea from the retailer, the Lipton tea had the white granules. When it was tested in the lab, it was found out that it was a chemical which could harm the human beings. So, the consumer forum held that every consumer has the right to be protected from any kind of hazardous goods which will harm them and their environment. The next right that the consumer has is the right to be informed about the quality, quantity, standard, price or any other information which they would like to know about the product. If we look at the case of Standard Automobiles versus Syed Ashrath, here the complainant was sold the ignition coil for 88 rupees and the actual price was only 75 rupees. So, it was held that the consumer has to be told about the right price and they cannot charge excessive price to the consumer. If you look at the case of Consumer Protection Council versus National Dairy Development Board, here the complainant wanted to know about the use of palm oil in the products that the board was making, but when the board was asked for the information, the board refused to share the information about the usage of palm oil in their products. Here it was held that the consumer has to be given any information which they expect the manufacturer or the trader to provide with respect to the product that is getting sold, because they have the right to be informed. The consumers have the right to choose from wherever possible the variety of products at the competitive price. They have the right to be heard whenever they make complaints in any of the commission, district commission or the national commission. They have every right to be heard about their complaints. They have the right to seek redressal for any kind of malpractices, exploitation, unfair and restrictive trade practices of the manufacturer. So, they have the right to get the redressal for any kind of exploitation. They have the right to consumer education. Here the consumer has the right to learn about the procedure to complain, what are all the redressal that they can get from the consumer forum. So, they have every right to be aware of all the legalities and the rules and regulations and the rights that they have under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, let us look at the unfair trade practices. Section 2, subsection 1R of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the unfair trade practices. If a trader or the manufacturer, in order to promote the product or in order to sell, use or supply the product, or in the at the time of providing the services, if they are going to adopt any unfair methods or deceptive practice, this falls under unfair trade practice. Let us see what are all the aspects that are considered as unfair trade practice under the Consumer Protection Act. The first one is to do with the false representation which the manufacturer or the trader makes either orally or in writing or in any kind of visual representation. Then it is considered as unfair. if they are going to come with a false advertisement with respect to the bargaining price, which actually they don't intend to provide. This falls under unfair trade practice. If the trader or the manufacturer are going to come with different gifts and prices with the intention of luring the consumers, but they do not have the intention of giving these gifts and prizes, then it falls under unfair trade practices. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to disclose any information which the consumer has shared with the producer or the trader, then it amounts to unfair trade practices. If the producer or the manufacturer or the trader, when they are not going to follow the safety standards which they are supposed to follow under the prescribed law, then it amounts to unfair trade practices. If the trader or the manufacturer are going to hoard the goods or destroy the goods, as a result of which the supply gets restricted and the prices of the goods increases, then this kind of hoarding and destroying is considered as unfair trade practice. If a trader or the manufacturer refuses to take back the goods which are defective from the consumer, then again it comes under unfair trade practices. Normally in our day-to-day life, we normally see in many of the shops that no refund is allowed here. The goods once sold will not be taken back. No exchange is allowed. All these instructions would be there in the retail store or in the departmental store. If at all you see that, you understand that they don't have any right to refuse the exchange of goods or return of goods. This is considered to be prohibited. No manufacturer, no trader can say that they will not exchange the product or they cannot take back the product which is defective. It is mandatory for them to take it back as per the law. And if the trader or the manufacturer is going to sell spurious goods, or if they are going to involve themselves in any kind of deceptive practices, then it amounts to unfair trade practices. If the trader or the manufacturer is not issuing the bill or the cash memo or the receipt after the sale of goods, this also is considered as an unfair trade practice. Now let us see what are all the different kinds of false representation that are covered under the Consumer Protection Act. The false representation of the goods in terms of its standard, quality, quantity, grade, composition, style or model. False representation of services with respect to its quality, standard or grade. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to sell the rebuilt, second hand, renovated, reconditioned or old goods as new goods, then it is considered to be a false representation. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to claim that the goods and services have sponsorship, approval, accessories, performance, uses, benefits, characteristics which these goods and services do not have. Similarly, if the sellers or the supplier if they are going to claim that they have sponsorship, approval or affiliation, and in reality these sellers or the suppliers do not have the sponsorship, approval and affiliation. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to falsely state the need or the usefulness of a particular goods or services, if the trader or the manufacturer are going to come with warranty and guarantee with respect to the performance, efficacy or the length of life of a product without actually testing it, without doing any adequate and necessary test, if they are going to come with the warranty and guarantee, then it also falls under false representation. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to come with a misleading price, that results in false representation. If the trader or the manufacturer makes a false or a misleading facts disparaging the goods, services or the trader this also falls under false representation. Now let us look at the restrictive trade practice. Section 2 subsection 1 NN deals with the restrictive trade practice. If a service provider or the manufacturer or the trader of good is going to delay the supply of the goods or the provision of the service beyond the time which they have agreed to provide the service or the goods, as a result of which the consumer has to pay a higher price for the goods or service, then it is considered to be a restrictive trade practice. Similarly, if the service provider or the manufacturer or the trader are going to connect the selling of one goods or service with another goods or service, then again it falls under the restrictive trade practice. For instance, if a departmental store is going to insist that the consumer should buy the stabilizer along with a refrigerator, then it is called as a restrictive trade practices. In case if the bank is going to insist that if the depositor wants a locker, then they will have to have a fixed deposit. Again, this falls under restrictive trade practices. So, if the manufacturer, trader or the service provider is going to connect the selling of one goods or service with the selling of or the purchasing another product or service, then it amounts to restrictive trade practices. This is called as tie-up sales or tying agreement. If we look at the case of Anand Gas, here Anand Gas insisted that if the consumer wants to have the gas connection, they will have to buy the gas stove of Anand Gas. So, this is prohibited under the Consumer Protection Act and it falls under the restrictive trade practice. In case a shopkeeper is going to say that if a consumer wants to buy a bed and a cot, fine, and if they buy it individually, it may be costing them, say the cot may cost them say 10,000 rupees and the bed may cost them 5,000 rupees. If they buy the cot and the bed together, then they will have to pay 13,000 rupees. If the trader or the manufacturer is going to come with this kind of proposition, this doesn't fall under restrictive trade practice, for the reason the consumer has the choice of whether to buy both the products together or individually. It is an option that the trader or the manufacturer makes, which we popularly call that as combo offers. So, when things are bought together, the price that you may have to pay could be lesser. So, this doesn't fall under restrictive trade practice, for the reason it is not a compulsion on the part of the consumer to go for both the products together. If they want, they can go for the composite product or they can go for buying the products individually. When this freedom or the option is there for the consumer, then it does not fall under restrictive trade practice. Now, since we kept on mentioning about trader and manufacturer, we need to know how the trader and the manufacturers are different from one another. First, let us understand the meaning of trader. Section 2 subsection 1Q of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the term trader. As per the Consumer Protection Act, anyone who sells or distributes the goods and if is called as a trader. In case the manufacturer is going to manufacture the goods as well as selling the goods, then the manufacturer also falls under trader. If somebody is going to buy the goods, pack it and give it, even these packers are called as traders. Traders are not allowed to charge excessive price than what is being mentioned in the cover of the package or than what is being fixed under the law which is being in force. or whatever price that is getting price that gets displayed on the goods. Yes, if they are going to charge beyond that, even that falls under excessive price. For instance, if the government says that the milk packets cannot be sold beyond 20 rupees and the milk distributor sells it for 22 rupees, that this results in charging excessive price, which is prohibited under the Consumer Protection Act. If the package of a cool drink says that the price that can be charged for the cool drink, maximum price that can be charged for the cool drink is say 25 rupees and the retailer charges 27 rupees, this also falls under charging excessive price, which is prohibited under the Consumer Protection Act. Then who is a manufacturer under the Consumer Protection Act? Section 2, subsection 1J of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the meaning of the manufacturer. Manufacturer could be the one who actually produces or manufactures the goods. Not necessarily he should always manufacture the goods. Sometimes what the manufacturer can do is the manufacturer can get the components from different firms, and the manufacturer can assemble these components and come with the product and sell it in the market, like we talk about computer assembling, television assembling. So all these are the example of assembling business where they don't manufacture everything, they buy the components, they assemble the components and they make products. Even these people fall under manufacturers. There are cases where people would be buying the goods, they will not be manufacturing at all, they will be buying the goods from different sources, they will be putting their trademark and they will be selling the product in the market, even though the person does not manufacture the goods. Here, since the individual is procuring the goods from different sources and selling it under their trademark or the brand name, here the person who sells these kinds of product under their brand name and the trademark are called as manufacturer. If you look at the case of Bajirao versus Hindustan Lever Limited, we can understand that the complainant made a complaint that the cotton seeds that he bought from the Hindustan Lever Limited was defective in nature. But Hindustan Lever told that they actually did not grow the cotton seeds. It was grown by a person or by a firm in Gujarat. In fact, Hindustan Lever bought those cotton seeds, put there under the brand name and sold it to the complainant. Then they told that they are not responsible for the defect in the cotton seed. But it was held that since it was procured by the respondent and the respondent only made a sale to the complainant, here the respondent is considered as the manufacturer. This falls under the third point which I just mentioned. Sometimes what happens, even assembling business is called as manufacturing. There are chances a company may be having different branches and the head office could be supplying the components to different branches for assembling, and one of the branches could be assembling in a particular region and could be selling that assembled product in that particular region. In case any of the assembled product becomes defective in that particular region, the branch cannot be held responsible for it. Only the company which is actually doing the business, who falls under the definition of manufacturer, would be made responsible for the defect. One thing we need to understand, who should be complained, in the sense whenever there is going to be defect in the product, the complaint should be raised against who? Is it manufacturer or the trader? Normally the consumer would make a complaint against the person from whom he or she has bought the goods or services. So from whomsoever they have bought it, they will raise a complaint against that person, who could be a manufacturer or a trader. Let's assume the consumer has bought the goods from the trader. Trader is the one who has bought the goods from the manufacturer and distributes it, right? So here, since there is a defect in the product, the consumer makes a complaint against the trader. Can the consumer include the manufacturer also who has actually manufactured the product? Yes, the consumer can do it, but it is optional. So, normally the consumers would be making a complaint against the trader from whom they have bought the product, and if they want to include the manufacturer also in the complaint, they can very well do it. It is optional. They can always include both the trader and the manufacturer whenever there is going to be defect in the goods or services. Now let us look at the definition of goods as per Consumer Protection Act. Consumer Protection Act hasn't defined goods as such, but it has taken the definition from the Sale of Goods Act. So let us look at the definition of goods as per the Sale of Goods Act. Section 2 subsection 7 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 defines goods, that is every kind of movable property other than actionable claims and money. So goods include all movable property like the stocks, shares, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be severed before sale or under the contract of sale. But goods do not include actionable claims and money. The example for actionable claims and money are the claims to the debt, claims to the insurance policy, or even claims towards the arrear of rent. All these fall under actionable claims and money, and they do not form part of the goods. So let us look at what is defect with respect to the goods. Section 2 subsection 1F of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the definition of defect. Defect means any fault, imperfections, shortcomings in the quality, quantity, potency, purity or standard which the manufacturer has to maintain as per any law in force, or which the manufacturer has to adhere to as per the contract he or she has entered. So when the goods are not going to have the prescribed quality, quantity, purity standard as per the law or as per the contract, then it is said to be a defective goods. Let us look at some of the cases related to this defects. In the case of TT Private Limited versus Akhil Bharatiya Grahak Panchayat, the complainant bought pressure cooker from the respondent, and when the pressure cooker was used, it got burst. So this actually was harmful to the complainant. So it was held that the product that was sold by the respondent was defective in nature. In the case of Ramesh Chandra versus Commercial Tax Officer, the registration book was not given along with the purchase of the Jeep. So this not giving the registration book along with the sale of the Jeep by the respondent was considered to be defective. In the case of Narayanan Iyengar versus Shakti Food, the complainant bought cool drinks from the Shakti Foods, but whatever cool drink that was bought, in some of the bottles, they had some foreign elements over there, so substances was there. Then it was given for testing, and they found out that it had chemical presence, which as a result of which those some of them who consumed it got affected by it. So it was held that anything that is hazardous in nature is considered to be defective. In the case of Barsat Ali versus MD West Bengal Essential Commodities Supply Corporation Limited, the complainant bought rapeseed oil from the respondent, but the seed had toxic substance, as a result of which the complainant had to suffer physically in terms of paralysis of his limbs and even paralysis of other parts of his body. Since it had actually harmed the complainant, it was held that the seed that was supplied was defective. In the case of Farooq Hazi Ismail versus Gavabai, what we could understand was the electronic appliance that was sold by the respondent did not have the ISI mark. Since it did not have the ISI mark, that means it is not as per the standards that had been prescribed by the appropriate authority, which is considered to be unsafe. So, the electronic appliance that was sold by the respondent to the complainant was considered to be defective. In the case of Dayanand versus Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, it was held that the overfilling of gas in the cylinder is considered to be a defective one. In the case of Shanmugasundaram versus Tamil Nadu Housing Board, the flat that was allotted to the complainant started developing cracks in the wall as well as in the floor after the handover. So, it was held that the flat that was sold was defective. In the case of Chittaranjan Sahu versus Jain, here the complainant bought marbles from the respondent, but once the complainant started polishing the marble, the marble started changing color. It was held that the marble that was sold was defective because the respondent did not tell the complainant at the time of the sale that if the marble is going to be polished, it will lose its color. Since it was not told by the respondent to the complainant at the time of purchase, it was held that the marble that was sold by the respondent as defective. All these whatever we have seen, it is all to do with goods. Now, let us get into services. First, let us understand what is the meaning of services under the Consumer Protection Act. Section 2, subsection 1(o) of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the definition of service. As per this, service of any description which is made available to the potential users, and it includes banking, financing, insurance, transportation, processing, supply of electrical or other energy, board or loading or both, housing, construction, entertainment, amusement, or purveying of news and other information. All these fall under services. This list, whatever definition that had been given in the Consumer Protection Act, is not exhaustive. Even other services like courier service or for that matter telecommunication, railways, all these also fall under services, though it is not mentioned in the definition. What is not included as service as per the Consumer Protection Act is if somebody is going to avail a service for free of cost without any consideration, then it is considered to be not to be a service because it has been availed free of cost. If a patient goes to a doctor, gets the treatment and does not pay the fee for the service, then here the doctor service is not considered as a service for the reason the patient got the treatment free of cost. If for instance, government hospitals, they don't charge the patients for the medical treatment. So, we cannot say that the government hospital falls under service for the reason there is no consideration. Another thing that is excluded from services is the contract of personal service. We talk about two things here. One is the contract of personal service and another is the contract for personal service. Contract of personal service means we talk about landlord and tenant, we talk about master and servant. All these are considered to be contract of personal service and it does not fall under the definition of service. Why so? The reason is here the master has full control over the kind of service that should be extended by the servant. So, they can decide how the service should be, since they have total control over the service that they would be getting from the servant. This contract of personal service does not fall under service. Only contract for personal service fall under it. For instance, when we give a dress for stitching to a tailor, we can only tell like how the dress should look. We cannot say how it should be stitched. We cannot give instruction with respect to the kind of stitches that has to be done, or kind of a needle or the thread that has to be used by the tailor. All that cannot be instructed to the tailor. Here this falls under service, as it is contract for personal service, where we do not have control over the service provider with respect to how the service has to be given. That is included in the definition of service. Now let us understand what is deficiency in service. Section 2, subsection 1G of the Consumer Protection Act deals with the deficiency in service. First is to do with the fault, imperfections, shortcomings, or any inadequacy that one may have in the quality, nature, or the manner of performance. So when there is going to be any fault or imperfections or shortcomings or inadequacy that one faces at the time in the performance of the service, then it is considered to be deficient. We can understand it by looking at the case of Southern Eastern Railway versus Anand Prasad Sinha. Here the complainant was using the railway service. But when he and his wife were using the service, they found out that the window shutters were not closing properly. Even the berth had the rexin which was all torn, and there were rusty iron which in fact harmed the wife of the complainant. So all these are considered to be a defective service. And it was held that the railway service that was given to the complainant was defective, as there were imperfections and shortcomings in the service that was provided. The next, let's look at the case of Poonam Verma versus Ashwin Patel. If you look at this particular case, the complainant was getting the Ayurvedic treatment from the respondent, and the complainant felt that the treatment was not correct. It was an incorrect treatment. In fact, the respondent was giving the Ayurvedic treatment, but the respondent was the homeopathy practitioner. So it was held that the service that was provided by the respondent was defective. If we look at the next thing is, if the service provider is not going to follow the rules and regulations that had been mentioned in any law that is currently under force, or if they are not going to follow the terms of the contract he or she has entered into, then it is said to be a defective service. We can understand this better by looking at the case between Lata Constructions versus Dr. Ramesh Chandra Shah. If you look at this particular case, the complainant made a complaint that the respondent did not give the apartment as per the time that's been mentioned by them in the contract. When that actually happened, when they couldn't deliver the flat as per the time limit that they have mentioned, what the respondent told was, the respondent told that they would be compensating, they would be paying back the money to the complainant. They again came with a contract stating that they would be giving back the money to the complainant. Even after the lapse of the time that had been mentioned in the contract, the complainant did not give back the money. So as a result of which it was held that the service was defective on two counts. One was to do with non-delivery of the flat on time. The next is giving back the money as per the date that's been mentioned in the contract. Since they did not do both these things as per the agreed terms, it was held that the service given by Lata Construction was defective. The next is the service would be considered as defective if it occurs during the happening of the performance. Only then the service would be considered as defective. We will understand this better by looking at the case between Jaipur Metals and Electricals Limited and Lakshmi Industries. Here, the complainant had a contract with the respondent for the supply, erection as well as commissioning of the cold rigging mill, but the respondent only supplied the mill as per the terms, but the respondent did not do the erection as well as commissioning. So, the complainant felt that there was deficiency in the service, but what the consumer forum felt was like, since the erection or the commissioning of the mill did not even start, the complainant cannot say that there is deficiency in the performance of the service. If that had started and if the respondent hadn't performed or hadn't performed as per the requirement, then it can be called as the deficiency in service, not otherwise. So, if at all the complainant wants to say that there is deficiency in the service, then the performance must have happened. Only if the performance has happened and if there are any lacuna in the performance, one can call it as a deficiency in the service. If the performance hasn't happened at all, then this doesn't come under deficiency in service. The next is with respect to deficiency should be related to a service. In the sense, the service should fall under the definition of service of Consumer Protection Act. If the particular activity falls under the definition of service of Consumer Protection Act, then only the deficiency comes into the picture, not otherwise. In the case of Mangilal versus Chairman, District Rural Development Agency, here what the complainant did was, the complainant paid ₹100 as the application fee and also executed a bond with the respondent for drilling a tube well, but the respondent did not drill the tube well because it was not feasible for them to do that digging of tube well. It was not feasible at that particular place. Here what the consumer forum felt was that first of all, the execution of a bond for the performance of digging of tube well does not amount to hiring of service as per the definition of Consumer Protection Act. Since this transaction itself does not fall under the definition of service, so there is no point in making a complaint with respect to deficiency in service. The last one is to do with deficiency in service due to circumstances beyond the control. In case the respondent, in case the person who has to actually perform the service couldn't do beyond, since it is beyond his or her control, then we cannot say that there is a deficiency in service. For instance, a person agrees that they would be helping another person in the irrigation. Then what happens, all of a sudden the power supply got cut in a particular area due to the problem in the state electricity board, as a result of which the person who promised that he or she would be providing the irrigation facility to the another person, here we cannot say that they didn't perform and there is deficiency in service, because it is beyond the control of the person who agreed to provide the irrigation. But that is not the case when the problem can be rectified by the person who has agreed to provide a service. This we can understand by looking at the case between Orissa Lift Irrigation Corporation Limited and Bira Kishore route. If you look at this particular case, the complainant complainant got the promise from the respondent that the respondent would be providing the irrigation facility to the complainant, but the respondent did not provide the irrigation or supply of water due to the burning of the transformer in their area. So, as a result of which, what happened, the crops of the complainant got affected very badly. The complainant alleged that there was a deficiency in the service. Here the consumer forum held that there was deficiency in service for the reason that the complainant, the respondent could have rectified the problem by applying for or by looking for correcting the transformer. They could have availed or they could have made a complaint to the electricity board for correcting the transformer, and after that they could have provided the electricity to they could have provided the irrigation facility to the complainant, but they failed to rectify the problem. Actually, rectifying the problem is not beyond the control of the respondent. The respondent could have taken steps in repairing the transformer. If they had taken the steps and repaired it, they could have very well given the water to the complainant, and the crops wouldn't have got affected because of that. So, here the service was considered to be deficient because the circumstances were not beyond the control of the respondent. Thanks for listening.